The Galactic Empire had crushed civilizations for millennia. Star systems fell like dominoes beneath its unyielding boot, their inhabitants either annihilated or enslaved. The Empire's reach stretched across the galaxy, and nothing, not even the most advanced species, had stood in its way. It was the greatest force the cosmos had ever known. That is, until they encountered Earth. The council chamber of the Galactic Empire's warlords was a cavernous hall, cold and intimidating, bathed in the glow of distant stars. Its occupants, species older than human history could fathom, sat in their thrones, their eyes narrowed in contempt as they watched the Earth diplomat enter. General Darka, the ruthless leader of the Empire's military forces, looked down at the human with disdain. He had heard the reports, but the humans were so primitive. They spoke of peace, of alliances. How laughable. Darka's clawed fingers drummed on the armrest of his seat, his thoughts racing. This meeting was a formality, nothing more. The humans stood at the center of the room, unaffected by the cold judgment of those around them. The Earth representative, a diplomat known as Sarah Nolan, had crossed the vastness of space to reach this moment. She was dressed simply, as humans always were, but there was a sharpness in her eyes, a resolve that the Empire's leaders would soon come to recognize. Sarah's voice cut through the silence, low and calm. I stand before you as the representative of Earth and all of humanity. We wish to offer an alliance, an opportunity to work together, to bring about peace in the galaxy. Darka's lip curled into a sneer. Peace. He spat the word as if it were venom. Your planet is nothing but a speck in the vastness of the Empire. We've dealt with more powerful races than yours, and we've destroyed them all. What makes you think we'll do any different to you? Sarah didn't flinch. Her gaze never wavered from his. Because we're not like the others. We don't fight. We annihilate. The words hung in the air like an electric charge, crackling with tension. Darka barked a laugh, his voice booming in the chamber. Annihilate? You, a species that has only recently discovered space travel, would annihilate the Empire? You may have more weapons than you know how to use, human, but we've wiped out entire star systems with ease. Your threats are empty. Sarah's eyes hardened. You think I'm threatening you? I'm stating a fact. Humans don't just fight, they end wars. The moment you underestimate us will be the moment you lose. A chill settled in the room. The other members of the council exchanged uneasy glances. No one had spoken to Darka like this before. A young human diplomat, unflinching, speaking with such audacity. Darka stood, his towering form casting a shadow over the room. His claws flexed, and his eyes glowed with predatory intent. You are either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. You dare challenge the might of the Empire. Sarah met his gaze unflinchingly. I'm not challenging you. I'm telling you that Earth is not to be underestimated. You may destroy. You may conquer. But you will not bend us to your will. The atmosphere grew thick, the tension palpable. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the distant hum of the Empire's ships orbiting the planet. Then, with a gesture, Darka signaled to his advisors, dismissing the human diplomat. Leave now, human. You've said your piece, and it means nothing. Return to your pathetic little world before we decide to make an example of it. Sarah's expression didn't change. She took a slow, deliberate step back, her eyes never leaving the Empire's warlord. I'll leave. But know this. You've made a grave mistake. With that, she turned and exited the chamber, her words lingering like a warning shot across a vast expanse of space. Darka's eyes narrowed. He didn't understand what made this human so confident, so certain. But one thing was clear. This meeting had just become more than a diplomatic exchange. It was a declaration of war, though neither side fully realized it yet. Darka stormed to the war room moments later, his thoughts racing. He ordered his generals to prepare an assault on Earth. He would show this human diplomat and her species the true meaning of power. The Empire would crush them swiftly, as it had done countless times before. But as he listened to the reports from his commanders, doubt began to creep in. Earth was no ordinary target. Their weapons were unlike anything the Empire had seen. The human ships, while crude in design compared to the Empire's finest, had a destructive power that exceeded their apparent capabilities. Was there something more to this planet than they knew? And why had the human diplomat spoken with such confidence? Darka dismissed the thoughts, pushing them to the back of his mind. It didn't matter. Earth would fall. It always did. But as his fleet set course for the human homeworld, Darka could not shake the feeling that this time, something was different. And by the time he realized what that difference was, it might already be too late. The first wave of Empire ships reached Earth's orbit, ready to unleash their devastating assault. But as their weapons powered up, they received a single chilling message from Earth. You have no idea what you've just started. The first wave of the Empire's fleet descended like a shadow upon Earth, vast warships blocking out the sun as they entered orbit. The Empire's might was a force that had never known defeat, its ships designed for total domination. Yet, as the fleet hovered in Earth's atmosphere, there was no tremor of fear in the human heart, only quiet preparation. The humans had underestimated nothing, not even the scale of the Empire's wrath. They had anticipated this moment. On Earth, General Sarah Nolan stood on a battlefield far different from any the Empire had imagined. She wasn't at the front lines, but in a command center far beneath the surface, where the hum of high-tech machinery was the only sound that filled the room. Her elite forces, trained beyond the limits of ordinary soldiers, were ready for the fight. But it wasn't their strength in numbers that would win the battle. It was their weapon: surprise. The Earth fleet had been preparing for months. They had spent years hiding in plain sight, constructing technology that could rival, if not surpass, anything the Empire had. And now, as the invaders advanced, Earth's weaponry would be revealed. Sarah watched the live feeds of the Empire's ships in orbit, their massive guns powering up to strike. The hum of their weapons signaled the imminent destruction of the planet below. But the humans had planned their response down to the last detail. They knew this day would come. "Activate the countermeasures," Sarah ordered, her voice calm but firm. On cue, a sudden wave of electromagnetic pulses erupted from the planet's surface, launching outward with devastating precision. The Empire's ships shuddered as their systems scrambled, their targeting arrays short-circuited, and their sensors went dark. In an instant, Earth's defense systems had neutralized their most advanced weaponry. In the heart of the fleet, General Darka felt the first tremor of doubt. His systems faltered. His flagship, the Karthok, had lost its targeting capabilities. The Empire's invasion was stalling before it even began. "Report," Darka demanded, his voice harsh. He turned to his nearest officer, a sleek reptilian being with dark, yellow eyes that reflected the panic sweeping through the ship. "The human planet, their defenses, they've disabled our systems," the officer stammered, disbelief creeping into his voice. "Impossible," Darka hissed. "They're still a primitive species. How could they?" "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," another officer interrupted, this one speaking with urgency. "It's from Earth." Darka turned his gaze to the communication screen, where the human general appeared, her face cold and unyielding. "I told you," Sarah Nolan said, her voice steady, almost serene. "You underestimated us. This is just the beginning." Darka's claws clenched around the armrest of his seat. Earth's response had been unexpected, but now the real test would begin. Prepare for orbital bombardment. Wipe their cities from the map. The Empire's forces regrouped, launching their first salvo of destruction. They fired massive energy beams from their battleships, capable of incinerating entire cities in an instant. The beams cut through the atmosphere, streaking toward their targets below. But as the beams reached Earth, something extraordinary happened. The sky shimmered, and the energy beams deflected off an invisible barrier. The Empire's ships fired again and again, each time seeing their attacks turned back by a force they could not comprehend. "What is this?" Darka bellowed, his fury rising. Sarah's face appeared once again on the communication screen. "We've learned a thing or two about your technology," she said. "You've never fought anyone like us. We don't fight, we annihilate." As the Empire's fleet hesitated, Stunned by this unexpected turn, Earth's military forces mobilized. Thousands of human warships, sleek and faster than any the Empire had encountered, launched from the planet's surface. They moved with deadly precision, outfitted with advanced weaponry designed specifically to exploit the Empire's vulnerabilities. The battle raged above Earth as the Empire's ships fought to maintain their dominance. Yet, no matter how many ships the Empire launched, they could not breach Earth's defenses. Every time the Empire unleashed a devastating weapon, it was turned back, or worse, reflected back at them with even more devastating force. On the ground, humanity's elite soldiers prepared to take the fight to the surface. Sarah Nolan watched as her forces, well-trained and relentless, boarded transport ships to engage in ground combat. But this battle wasn't about territory or even survival. It was about sending a message to the Empire. The humans were not here to be conquered. Darka could only watch in disbelief as his fleet, once thought invincible, was slowly dismantled before his eyes. What was happening? How were these humans able to neutralize their weapons so easily? They were supposed to be an insignificant species, easily crushed by the weight of the Empire's might. But the truth was becoming clear. The Empire had never faced a species like humanity. As the last of the Empire's bombardment efforts were repelled, Darka issued a retreat order. Fall back. We need to reassess. The humans have something we don't understand. Sarah's voice crackled over the comms once more, a final warning. This is just the beginning. Don't think for a second you've won. This is our world, and you're only guests here. The retreating ships turned, their engines flaring as they fled the atmosphere. The sky above Earth began to calm, but the damage was already done. The Empire had underestimated Earth's might, and now they would have to face the consequences. Darka's ship slowly retreated into the darkness of space, but as he watched the fleeing humans below, a chilling thought crossed his mind. What if they were right? What if the true fight had only just begun? The Empire's retreat from Earth was nothing short of humiliating. For the first time in centuries, the Empire had been forced to flee from a planet they believed would crumble under their might. General Darka's confidence was shattered. He was no longer dealing with a primitive species, but with something far more dangerous, an adversary that fought not to survive, but to obliterate. Back on Earth, Sarah Nolan stood in the command center, watching the Empire's ships disappear into the void. The first victory was theirs, but she knew this was just the beginning. The war had only truly started. Report, Sarah said, her voice sharp. The room fell silent as her officers processed the data streaming in from all over the globe. Their fleet is in retreat, General, one officer confirmed. They've sustained heavy losses, but we've identified several critical weaknesses in their fleet. It won't be long before they regroup and retaliate. Sarah nodded, her expression unwavering. We've only dealt with their first wave. Their retreat is strategic. They're buying time to prepare. And when they come back, they'll be better prepared. We need to move fast. She turned to the map of the galaxy, her fingers hovering over the coordinates of the Empire's fleet. They had learned one thing. Humans didn't just defend. They adapted, they studied, and they retaliated with precision. But Earth's next move had to be calculated. She wouldn't wait for the Empire to dictate the terms of the war. Humanity had a strategy of their own. We're not going to play their game, Sarah continued. We're going to force them to come to us. Begin preparations for our counteroffensive. Target their weak points. We strike where they least expect. The officers nodded in agreement, already moving to implement the orders. Earth's technological advantages were now apparent, but the real strength lay in the humans' unyielding will and their ability to think in ways the Empire couldn't fathom. On the Empire's flagship, General Darka paced restlessly. The data from Earth's defenses was clear. Humanity had an uncanny ability to adapt and counterattack, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The retreat had been inevitable, but it had not been planned. The humans had caught them off guard, and Darka would not let that happen again. We must learn from this, Darka growled, his sharp claws digging into the surface of the command table. Their tactics were unlike anything we've ever seen. They didn't just defend, They anticipated every move we made. One of his advisors, a reptilian officer named Zarn, stepped forward. "General, they are primitive. Their technology is inferior. We can still crush them if we concentrate our forces. It's just a matter of time before they crumble under our might." Darka's eyes narrowed. He wasn't convinced. Their technology is more advanced than we expected. They have no reason to show mercy. They want destruction, and we can't afford to underestimate them again. He turned toward the view screen, staring at the remnants of his fleet scattered in deep space. The humans had done more than just fight back. They had systematically dismantled everything the Empire had thrown at them. They didn't wait for an opportunity. They created it. "We need a new plan," Darka muttered, his voice a low growl. "The humans won't make the same mistake twice." Back on Earth, Sarah's strategy was already in motion. The first wave of humanity's counteroffensive was underway, and it was designed to hit the Empire where it hurt most. The Empire had underestimated human resolve, and now they were going to pay the price. "Strike teams are in position," Sarah said to her officers. "We're going to take the fight directly to their supply lines. We cripple their resources, and we cripple their ability to fight." The human forces had studied the Empire's tactics in depth. They had learned how to exploit weaknesses, how to disable enemy fleets, sabotage infrastructure, and strike quickly before the enemy could react. The Empire's reliance on overwhelming force would be their downfall. Humanity was too agile, too unpredictable. As the human fleet launched its assault, Sarah watched from her command center, her face set in grim determination. Each strike was a calculated move, every action deliberate. They weren't just attacking, they were dismantling the foundation of the Empire's power, one target at a time. Back in the heart of the Empire, Darka received the news with growing fury. They've begun hitting our supply lines. How are they able to strike so fast? Zarn looked grim. "They've adapted to our movements. They've studied our tactics, and now they're using them against us." Darka slammed his fist into the table. "We cannot allow them to have this advantage. Mobilize our fleet. We will strike back, and we will do it with everything we have. The humans will learn that the Empire does not fall. We crush them completely." But as the general gave the order to mobilize, a gnawing sense of unease crept over him. The humans had shown something far more dangerous than technology, the ability to think and fight like no species he had ever encountered. The Empire's counterattack was already in motion, but so was humanity's next move. And this time, it wasn't just about fighting back, it was about total annihilation. The Empire had always prided itself on its ironclad structure, its ability to crush any threat before it could grow. But now, for the first time in its history, cracks were beginning to show. The Empire's vaunted military, its strongest asset, was struggling against a species it had deemed insignificant. And General Darka, once certain of victory, could no longer ignore the terrifying truth: the humans were winning. The Empire's fleets had been decimated by Earth's unexpected counterattacks. Their advanced weaponry had been turned back, their supply lines crippled, and their fleet was scattered in disarray. No one, not even Darka himself, could deny the humiliation that was unfolding before them. "Report," Darka barked, his claws digging into the cold metal of his command chair. His patience was wearing thin, and his rage simmered beneath the surface. Every minute that passed felt like another defeat. One of his officers, an anxious-looking alien with gray scales, hesitated before responding. "General, the human forces have hit our remaining supply routes again. We've lost contact with 3 of our distant fleets. They're systematically dismantling our forces." Darka's gaze hardened. He had always been a strategist, but nothing could have prepared him for this. Humans didn't just fight, they adapted. They weren't just defending their home, they were dismantling everything the Empire had built, piece by piece. "How?" Darka growled. "How are they able to track our movements so precisely?" "It's as if they know our tactics," the officer responded, his voice trembling. "We've been outmaneuvered at every turn. They're using our own strategies against us." and they're hitting us faster than we can react. Darka's thoughts raced. This was no longer just a battle for Earth. It was a battle for the very survival of the Empire. The humans were more resourceful than anyone had ever predicted, their tactics more unpredictable than any species the Empire had encountered. "We can't keep reacting like this," Darka muttered, half to himself. "We need to take the initiative. We need to break them before they break us." On Earth, Sarah Nolan stood before a large holomap, her eyes scanning the glowing lines that marked the movements of both human and Empire forces. The tide was turning. The initial victory had given humanity a much-needed advantage, but Sarah knew the Empire wouldn't stay on the defensive for long. The next move had to be decisive. "We've taken out most of their supply lines, General," one of her officers reported, "but we're detecting a large-scale movement. The Empire's fleet is regrouping. They're preparing for something big." Sarah's jaw tightened. "I knew they wouldn't stay down for long. But we've got the upper hand. It's time to hit them hard, while they're still trying to recover." The human forces had been carefully planning their next strike. They had studied every weakness of the Empire's massive war machine, and now they were ready to exploit it. But it wasn't just brute force that would win this battle. It was intelligence, precision, and the ability to strike at the right moment. "We've tracked their command center," Sarah said, pointing to a series of coordinates on the map. "It's vulnerable. We can cripple their entire fleet if we take it out. No more games. We hit them where it hurts." The officers in the room nodded. This was the moment. The human forces would no longer wait for the Empire's next move. They were going to strike, and strike hard. Darka's warship, the Karthok, cut through space like a predator hunting its prey. But the general knew something was wrong. The Empire's forces were disorganized, their systems fragmented. The humans had created chaos where there had once been order. And now, the Empire's ships were vulnerable. "Sir," Zarn, the reptilian officer, said as he approached Darka with a grim expression, "We've received another transmission from Earth. They're moving on our command center." "What?" Darka snapped. "How did they know?" Zarn swallowed hard. "They've been tracking our movements since the beginning. They've adapted to everything we've thrown at them. This isn't just a fight anymore. They're hunting us." Darka slammed his fist into the table. "Prepare for battle. We cannot allow them to succeed. We will crush them, or they will crush us." Sarah watched the Empire's fleet regroup from Earth's surface, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. If the humans could land a decisive blow, they could end the war before it truly began. But she knew the risks. The Empire wasn't going to lie down this time. They would come for Earth with everything they had. "General," an officer said, interrupting her thoughts, "we've confirmed the coordinates. Our strike team is in position. We're ready." "Do it," Sarah ordered, her voice calm, her resolve unshaken. "Take them down." The battle for the Empire's command center was brutal, fierce, and unforgiving. Earth's forces surged forward, hitting the heart of the Empire's defenses with everything they had. The Empire's fleet fought back, but the cracks in their once unshakable defense were starting to show. The humans were more than just a nuisance. They were a threat that couldn't be ignored. And then, in the final moments of the battle, as the human forces broke through the Empire's last line of defense, a chilling message from Earth echoed across the galaxy. "We warned you. You never stood a chance." As the Empire's command center fell, General Darka realized too late that the battle was no longer in his control. And the true war, the one that would decide the fate of the galaxy, was only just beginning. The Empire had never known fear, not truly. Not until they encountered the unrelenting fury of humanity. General Darka stood on the command deck of the Karthok, staring at the void of space, but all he could see was the devastation Earth had already wrought. The Empire was on the brink of collapse, and the humans, who should have been insignificant, were forcing them to the edge of extinction. He had underestimated them. He had thought that their primitive technologies, their unpolished strategies, would crumble under the weight of the Empire's might. But instead, the humans had adapted, evolved, and now they were hunting the Empire like predators tracking their prey. And the worst part? They seemed to enjoy it. "General, we've received a transmission from Earth," one of Darka's officers reported, the tension in his voice unmistakable. "Put it through," Darka growled, turning to face the screen. The image flickered to life. A human officer, calm but resolute, appeared on the screen. "This is Commander Rachel Ford of Earth Special Forces. We have your fleet in our sights. If you surrender now, we'll allow your ships to retreat. Otherwise, we'll finish what we started." Darka's blood boiled. His claws clenched, and for the first time in his life, he felt an unfamiliar sensation. Doubt. "Finish what you started." Darka's voice was low, filled with venom. "You think you can defeat the Empire? You think you can break us?" Commander Ford didn't flinch. "You're already broken. You just don't know it yet." The screen went black. Darka's fist slammed into the console, the sound echoing across the silent command deck. "Prepare for battle. We will crush them. They will learn that no one defies the Empire." On Earth, the human forces were already in motion. Their strike teams were ready, their weapons calibrated, and their resolve stronger than ever. Sarah Nolan stood in the command center, watching the latest intelligence reports pour in. The Empire had retreated into a defensive posture, but the humans knew the battle wasn't won yet. It was only beginning. "We've identified their key vulnerabilities," Sarah said, her voice steady. "The Empire has been cornered. It's time to finish this." One of her officers stepped forward. "General, we're ready to deploy the final phase of our plan. Their fleet is vulnerable. Our forces are in position to strike at the heart of their command." Sarah nodded, her gaze hardening. "Do it. Show them the full extent of humanity's power." The humans had held nothing back. Every resource they had was now focused on breaking the Empire once and for all. There was no mercy. There were no second chances. It was kill or be killed. As the human fleets advanced, Darka's own forces were caught in the deadly crossfire. The humans had used every advantage, every piece of intelligence, to launch a strike that was as swift as it was brutal. The Empire's ships were no longer the powerful juggernauts they had once been. Now they were broken and scattered, easy targets for the human onslaught. "Fire all weapons," Darka commanded. But even as he spoke, it became clear that his orders were meaningless. The humans had anticipated every move, every defense. They were too fast, too precise. The Empire's forces were being torn apart piece by piece. Darka's mind raced. Was this the end? Had they already lost? The human forces pressed on, unrelenting. The battle above Earth intensified as human warships moved in for the kill. Every strike they made was deliberate, each one calculated to hit the Empire where it hurt most. Their weapons were no longer a surprise. They were a relentless force, tearing down the Empire's defenses with surgical precision. Sarah Nolan watched the carnage unfold on the screens before her, but there was no triumph in her expression. Victory would come, but it wasn't about the win. It was about making sure the Empire could never rise again. "They're retreating," one officer reported. "The Empire's fleet is scattering. They can't fight back." Sarah's lips tightened. "They're not retreating, they're fleeing. And this time, they won't get away." Darka stood on the deck of his flagship, his eyes scanning the unfolding disaster. The Empire's forces were in full retreat, their ships breaking apart under the relentless human assault. He had never known fear like this. He had never felt this powerless. "General, we have no choice. We must flee," Zarn, his officer, said urgently. Darka hesitated. Was it over? Could it be? "We fight to the last ship," Darka spat. "We die as the Empire always has, fighting." But deep down he knew the truth. The Empire, once invincible, was crumbling before the human onslaught. As the Empire's fleet disintegrated, General Darka received a final transmission. It was from Earth. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a declaration. "Your Empire is finished. Surrender, or we will finish you." The message was clear. The humans weren't just trying to win. They were eradicating the Empire, piece by piece. The Empire was broken. The fleet that once ruled the stars was now scattered across the void, its commanders in full retreat, its weapons destroyed. General Darka had watched as his empire crumbled before the human onslaught. The last transmission from Earth had been clear. The war was over. The humans had won. But as Darka stood in the shattered remains of his flagship, he realized that victory came at an unimaginable cost. Across Earth, celebrations erupted. The human forces had decimated the Empire's military in a series of swift, brutal strikes. Their victory was a testament to the relentless determination of a species that had once been dismissed as weak, a species now feared across the galaxy. But as Sarah Nolan looked out from the command center, there was no joy in her eyes. The cost of this war had been high. The human fleet had been battered, and countless soldiers had fallen. The Empire might have been defeated, but the scars of battle ran deep. The galaxy would never be the same. "We did it," one of her officers said, his voice filled with disbelief. "The Empire is finished." Sarah nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She knew this war was only a small part of a larger conflict, one that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Earth had proven it could defend itself, but there were still unknown dangers out there. "We've won this battle, but the war for the galaxy isn't over," Sarah said quietly. "We've made our mark, but now we need to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again." Darka sat in the darkness of his war room, his fingers gripping the edge of his command console. The loss was staggering. His fleet, the pride of the Empire, was decimated. His warriors, his brothers and sisters, lay scattered across the stars, their final moments nothing more than a flicker in the void. He had always believed that the Empire was invincible, but in the face of humanity's relentless wrath, he had been proven wrong. Darka had underestimated Earth's ability to fight, to adapt, to destroy. "They've won," Zarn, his officer, said in a quiet voice. "We've lost." Darka's gaze hardened. "We don't lose. Not yet. The Empire may be defeated, but we are not." Zarn looked at him with uncertainty in his eyes. "What do we do now, General?" Darka stared out into the vastness of space. "We rebuild. We strike back. We may have been broken, but the Empire is far from finished. If we must go into the shadows and regroup, then we will. The humans may have won this battle, but they haven't won the war." On Earth, the war had ended, but the future was uncertain. The human forces had delivered a decisive blow, but now they faced the aftermath. Rebuilding would take time, and trust in the galaxy would not come easily. Sarah stood before the hollow map of the galaxy, her fingers tracing the coordinates of the Empire's now destroyed fleet. It was over, but a feeling of unease settled in her chest. The Empire had been only the beginning. She knew that other forces, other empires, were out there, watching, waiting for their turn to challenge humanity. "We've proven ourselves," Sarah muttered. "But the galaxy is vast, and we are just beginning to understand what we're truly up against." As Earth's leaders debated their next steps, a new transmission crackled through the communications channel. This time, it wasn't from the Empire. The message was simple, chilling, and clear. "Humanity may have defeated the Empire, but you have no idea what's coming next."